Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast of our Tuesday, June 11, Cumberland County Board of Commissioners meeting. It's a regular monthly meeting for June. And as we always do, we begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. We welcome anyone who wishes to join with us. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And everyone is present this evening. We start the meeting with approval of the previous meeting minutes on May 13th. We have a motion. It's been moved and seconded that they be approved. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We don't have any informational reports this week. It's worth noting that a couple of weeks ago, we had both budget presentations in detail from the manager and other executive staff members related to two budgets that we'll be considering later tonight. The Cross Arena budget, which is on a fiscal year, and also the county jail budget, which is on a fiscal year. Those are the two budgets that we deal with that begin July 1. Everything else in the county is on the calendar year and begins January 1. So we'll have those later tonight. We also had a kind of a robust informational set of presentations related to the Central Maine Power Associated proposal having to do with electrical power transmission to Massachusetts. And that is being broadcast, I think, across the county at various times on public cable, so people may see that. We have no presentations like that tonight, so this is the opportunity for public comment. Anyone who wishes to address the Board of Commissioners on any agenda or unagended item is welcome to come forward. Seeing none, we have listed 4 items on the consent agenda. By request, we're going to hold off, if there's no objection from the board, on 19-039 for a conventional discussion of that item. So I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda items 19-036, 37, and 38.
So moved. Second.
And, is there any discussion on any of these items? Just for the purpose of public information, I will make mention 36 is our monthly reapproval, basically, of commissions for patrol officers at the Sheriff's Department and others that need to be commissioned. 37 is a change in a participant charge related, an increase related to the alternative sentencing program for the coming year. And 38 is our annual agreement with Long Island, where as we do with several communities, we provide law enforcement support during the summer months on a seasonal basis. So all those in favor of those items, please say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Next, we'll take up item 039. I'll entertain a motion for approval of 039, and then we can have a discussion. Is there a motion to approve number 039?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. And it's open for discussion. Commissioner Wood-Tonis, did you have any?
I have some questions on this. I think, if I understand right, with this vehicle that we've had for a couple of years, and now we just want to spend of the money, to retrofit it. Well, my concern is at what point and how do we get a control on with the items that we receive that are so-called free items. And then when we get these items, it becomes a discussion with how we're gonna pay, what to retrofit this. Well, my concern, is there a policy or is there anything in place with that before we accept something, for free, with that we have thought it through with how we're gonna pay for this and how we are gonna pay, or are we gonna use taxpayers' money? And to tie in with that, it kind of concerns me that when a department, and I'm just not saying the sheriff's or his office on with the grants, go out for a grant, should that discussion become a level of a discussion with the county manager before they are allowed to accept a grant or to apply for a grant? And then he will bump it up to the commissioners. It just concerns me that we're getting all this stuff and then we're trying to find the money, it's afterwards. And I don't believe that there is a policy in place to say about free items or about, going after a grant. So that's where I'd like to have some discussion. And maybe it's time that we put a policy, or we ask the staff to come back with a policy on free items, and also a policy with applying for a grant. So, Jim, do you want to comment on that, or what?
Well, there are two questions there. The first is the free items, and the first thing that comes to mind, in this particular case, I think you're referring to the command vehicle that was pulled off the consent calendar.
Yes.
This was an item that was received from the federal government off the federal government surplus list. I believe we received that maybe 18 to 24 months ago. And the sheriff's office has been looking to enhance this vehicle, hence the staff report and request to move towards Autotronics LLC for kind of like phase one of the enhancement. So if I'm going to create this model, we do not have a written policy on process, on obtaining equipment off from the federal surplus or any other surplus list that might be floating around there. So that's the answer to question one, is that we do not have a policy or a process that staff needs to follow or go through for authorization to seek or obtain or capture the surplus equipment. The second item, the grants, there is a policy. Travis worked on the policy about a year ago, and it is in hopes of gathering up all the grant data that we have so that we have one central clearinghouse and depository for all the information pertaining to grants that we have received. And I'm going to kick it over to Travis because I'm not remembering right offhand. I'm going to put him on the spot. But is there anything in that policy that requires commissioner approval or county manager approval on the front end before that grant is applied for?
Not on the application side, no. I mean, what we had wanted to develop was basically an aggregation of everything that we either held or were applying for. So we understood deadlines when they came, whatever commitments that the county was making, matching or permanent employees paid for with temporary funds. It was an understanding of what our commitments were and sort of backstop so we didn't miss deadlines. Mm-hmm. It didn't include in it a policy about sort of a strategic or philosophical approach to how we decide what grants we are and are not going to apply for. And the conversation that we had was that we didn't feel at the time we were developing it like that was something that we had to put on to the departments. The one thing that we did put into that policy is that the manager would not sign off on accepting an application until all of that data had been imported into the system. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to apply for a grant, we at least had to have all that information, but we didn't take it to the point of saying, before we apply for this, what's the chain of command that we have to go through before we decide if we want to chase it. Ultimately, our goal was purely to have aggregated data of what we had and who we owed for what.
Okay, now what is the policy when the grant will comes in, is who has the authority to accept that grant?
Typically, at this point, I don't think it's gone before the commissioners, and it's my belief that it probably should, that grants should be accepted by the commissioners as it is new revenue into the coffers of the county, and the commissioners are the overseers of the financial side of the county. And so there should be a process there that grants are accepted on a formal basis at a commissioner meeting.
And then, how about, do you think is on with the grants with that, once it goes through Travis and it goes through all that, is that it either is accepted and signed off by the county manager, or do you will bump it up to the commissioners? I would say not to bump it up to the commissioners, because if there's a deadline, within like a week and a half, it might be on an off week. So I would say maybe that we could put something in place is, but once that the grant has been filled out and before it's applied for, that it should be signed off by the by the county, our manager, and then he would inform with the commissioners of X, Y, and Z, our grants, and then the same thing is on the other end. Would they come back and the county manager would get it, but I will bump it up to the commissioners to accept it, because like you said, it's with the revenue, how that's coming in, it's new revenue. So, and I would like to see a policy, or maybe have staff but work on a policy for this free material, that we receive, and come up with a policy of, of how we are going to set this free stuff. Because is it my understanding that we have enough money to retrofit this now with some money left over, but with the money down the road, where's that going to come from? Would that be something that would have to be put into the budget next year?
That will be a request from the sheriff's office to me through the budget process starting up late July.
So I would like to see some kind of a policy before we accept all this stuff as free, with how it's going to be paid for.
So, that is, that should be a separate item than consideration of this particular matter, because it has some complications that probably need to be thought through, so we'd be glad to see whatever the work product ends up being on that. I do remember that we've accepted numerous grants by vote over the years that I'm aware of. This is, and it is kind of complicated. This particular vehicle, I think I remember when we accepted it, if it's the same one I'm thinking of, and it really is critical to both hazardous waste issues, and it's also a command center, or intended to be a command center in the case of a kind of thing you hope never happens, the kind of the active shooter kind of issues that Portland has capacity related to that, and it's not secondary, but it's supplemental to that, and in order to implement it, it looks like there's at least 3 grants that are involved in just the renovation of the vehicle, and a backup of the seizure money, which is dedicated revenue for law enforcement only, can be used for equipment and that kind of thing. So, is it satisfactory to have this come back around at a future date on a more general basis? And
Well, I'm just concerned is that we get it, well, partly taken care of, Because I'm assuming they're going to replace with the one that they have now? You know, is that what this is for? Because we have a command one now that we use. And with what is the matter with that one that we got with this one that we're spending all this money on? And with what are we gonna do with the old one?
I think I would ask Captain Goulet, who is in the crowd, to answer that question for you. Captain?
Hi, it's Captain Don Goulet with the Sheriff's Office. I'm one of the captains there. So to Commissioner Rotonis's question specifically about the current command van,
Yeah.
yes, when this became available, the discussion was the current one is aging out, both with the equipment that's in it. So for examples, I think you've been involved in some of the conversations recently about the potential radio upgrade that's forthcoming within the county. So in the discussions with our radio vendor, those radios that are currently in the command van would become obsolete. So those would all have to be replaced. In addition to that, the age of obviously the command van currently in place is smaller. And we struggle sometimes during major events for space. So the proposed one that's in front of you is a much larger command van, has additional capabilities that we just spaced out in the sense of size in the current one. So it was a combination of looking at technology upgrades as well as the current van is still operational, has low mileage, but it's older. We've had to replace the rear bumper once. We've had to replace the front bumper just from rust, wear and tear. So the idea is to, yes, we would phase out, once this one went operational, we would phase out the old one.
And how much more money over, beyond these 3 grants, are we going to need to outfit this?
So the proposal that you have in my task, or what I was given for a task, is how do we get this piece of equipment operational at a communications level? So what you have in front of you for the proposal would put it operational with radios.
Yeah,
Not all the radios that we would need,
yeah,
but it would get it operational so a dispatcher or 2 could sit in there and talk on the radio, would have computer setups, again, because they all use the computers now, to be able to relay that information. So it's some of the other basic setup. We had to replace blue lights,
Yeah.
with there's red lights on it, so we had to replace it with blue lights, those type of things. So I guess it would depend on what additional things we would like to have on that operationally. Would depend on what we could add. So the challenge that I gave the people that were putting in for what things would cost this is pie in the sky.
yeah.
You know, what's the cost of that? And then what can you get me, what's the bare minimum that you can get me in operational? So what you have in front of you is the retrofit, with the idea, part of that discussion, I'm not a contractor, but I know that it costs you more if you're gonna build and then in a couple of years later rebuild. So the challenge that I asked them to put together is, if this is pie in the sky, what can you pre-wire so that it's ready for if next year or the year after we want to put something additional in, that they can just hook in a new computer without having to rewire everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think if I did my math right, is all said and or done is after, because this is gonna cost $40,000, and there's gonna be like an extra $5,000 where that will carry over?
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
I always go to
Right.
the conservative
Yeah,
side, that
right.
things never,
So, and then, once that money is gone, and we're still not completely always outfitted, well, that's my concern, with where's this money gonna come, and how many times are we gonna have to go back to the well to keep getting more money and more money? So.
Don, if we had to purchase this vehicle new, what would it cost? Or even, newer than the one we have?
Sure, the Faber, was one of the companies I use, they specialize in these. Again, vehicle with equipment, you're starting at the low end,
Right,
about
the
half a
low end
million
of equipment,
dollars.
right.
And some of the ones that I've visited at trade shows are into the millions. And a lot of that is all because of the electronics.
And the vehicle was granted to us by the federal government, free of charge?
Correct, I don't know the acronym, but it's LESO.
And we have grants this year that's not going to cost us any money out of the budget, correct?
Correct.
For the low-end equipment. So at least now we're ahead of the game. And if you did not get additional funding from our budget last year, you could still operate it on the low operational end. Not ideally, but you still
Correct.
could, right? Very good, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? I just wanted to be sure I understood and I appreciated the detail in the memo about all this that the sheriff and manager signed. There's 19,000 in the memo mentioned, which is available monies from, I assume it's from seizures. And that is restricted to law enforcement purposes, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and that, none of that money is being accessed, at least as part of the plan, at the moment, right?
Correct, it's on the table to,
Cost overruns,
Right.
better computers, something or other, maybe, or maybe nothing, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, you kind of hit on what I was going to ask, and then the asset forfeiture monies, they come into the county, how? What's that process?
Seized from drug dealers and put in the bank, right?
A lot of times it's through property seizures during arrests. And it's divvied up through the district attorney's office to the law enforcement agencies that participate in the arrest, plus I believe the state or the DA's office takes a percentage of it.
And then we have to approve the accepting it.
Correct.
Correct. And I guess in this particular case, staying on the conservative side here, is that, so does that mean that we should be having some indication as how those funds are used?
Well, that's part of the process here, that Captain Goulet in his memo has outlined where he's proposing to draw the funds to cover the cost for this work to be done. And he's listed 4 locations where those funding will come, one of them being asset forfeiture. I will make mention that there was greater review and involvement of the county commissioners in years past. There was an asset forfeiture admin reg, and in working through with staff in developing the new admin reg book that we have, everything that was in that admin reg was really not applicable. And it was based on very old, I think it was federal statute, that really dictated what was in our admin reg, and it wasn't applicable in today's world. So we got rid of that admin reg when we redid the admin regs within the last 6 months. And that allowed the commissioners to have more hands-on in the asset forfeiture, which is no longer a federal requirement other than the commissioners accepting the money.
And the last comment I'll make, and it really doesn't, it's just something that the captain made mention of, and I would like in the future maybe to hear something about it. It says it's going to upgrade the radio system, and I thought that our radio system integrated with our emergency system. That was the last time we upgraded that whole system.
We are in conversations, staff is in conversations right now about upgrading the entire system because we are coming to the end of the lifespan of the current system. And that not only brings in the regional communications department, but also the SO and the jail. And then we will also bubble it out maybe as phase 2 to local law enforcement agencies that are on the system. But right now, we're taking care of ourselves and kind of the backbone of the system. But that might be something that will be coming before you sooner than later as we're refining our approach and cost estimates around that.
Any chance that during one of our workshops, we have some explanation of it?
I would be hesitant to bring it forward within, I'd say, the next 30 days, because I think there's a lot of work that's still being worked on.
I'm not saying,
But absolutely, I think it's more of a good topic, maybe September, October, to do a check-in, sure.
And just to be clear, regardless of the source of grants, the approval of any expended monies is a budgetary item that would be passed on by the commissioners at some point, right?
Right, the Phase 2 portion of this, the improvements to this truck, van, unit, whatever the thing is, will be a capital request that will go through the 2020 budget. And you will see that request when I present the budget to you, the first meeting in September.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the captain?
Just one final, no, I'm all set with you. I'm all set. Just one final comment is that I can support this, but what I would like to see is for us to give this to staff, for staff to develop some kind of policy in regarding accepting of free items, and also a policy on, grants, that either the county, our manager we're signing off on them before they're sent, and then they come, back to the county, manager, and then he brings it back to us. Because if we're gonna be responsible for grants and with the new monies were coming in, it would be nice, to know with what's coming down the line. Because I guess there is, for lack of a better word, there's not a clearinghouse, kind of here at our level.
That's not a motion at this point, so.
Move the question.
We would, maybe, if you'll indulge me, Commissioner, maybe we can have that. I certainly would want to know the order of magnitude of what we're talking about, whether this is an occasional thing, or, whether there's tens of thousands of dollars annually affected by this. So, with that in mind, when
Are you talking grants or the surplus property?
I think where Commissioner Watonis is driving us is kind of the hidden, embedded future budgetary impact kind of issue. And I think it seems like she's talking about a prophylactic rule related to that of some kind, and if that's a good idea, then we should certainly consider it, but we'd like to know the details before we get too far into it. We have a motion on the question. Is there any objection? Seeing none, all those in favor of the main motion, which is 19039, the approval of the proposed contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, carries. Next item is the emergency operations plan, county emergency operations plan. And do we have a presentation of any kind on that?
Yes, Joe Trail, the Director of EMA, and Emily Castor, the Deputy Director, are here to present. The Commissioners should have a slide deck in front of you, a few pages, and Joe is going to walk us through the slide deck, which is kind of the cliff notes to the much larger document that you received about a week and a half ago. I think we sent it out to you just to give you enough time to read through the 40-plus pages that it is. So, Joe, it's all yours.
Welcome.
Thank you. So good evening. Again, my name is Joe Chappell, the Director of Emergency Management.
Emily Castor, the Deputy Director.
So we're extremely excited to be here again with you, in front of you. This time we've got an action item of approving our emergency operations plan for the county. And I'll give you a little background. It's been a while since we've had something approved and finalized. So what we've done here in the past couple of years is tried to make some forward progress on it, tried to get this whittled down a little bit. We had a lot of education, a lot of fluff in it. We pared it down to what we really do, and it's in front of you. So bottom line, What we're going to be asking for you by the end of the night is approval and signature. So simply, that's all we're asking for. If you have any questions, please stop. I can start at ground zero and I can talk to the rest of the night about emergency operations plans. But simply put, this is our cornerstone document for planning for emergency operations in Cumberland County. Every other document we do, every other plan that we build, kind of centers around this base emergency operations plan. So,
That's the
What-
signature page,
yeah, what we have, this is, again, the cornerstone document. This is what we're built around. I do want to pay to show attention, if you're looking at the slide deck presentation, the emergency management program, which I have a different, it may be on a different page. It might be on page 2. Slide that says emergency management program. It is broken up into columns: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Kind of where we operate for the region. This plan really sits in the response plan, but we have several plans we're actively working at this time. So fortunately for you, for the commissioners, this is the only one that we're going to be pushing in front of you to say, we need your signature. Everything else is approved through the director and through the county manager, and it's still your visibility, but by requirement, this is the one that just needs your signature here. But it just tells you that we have a lot of work to do. All these are in some shape, form, or another. There's probably at least 30 plans that are in some form of active revision, or almost approval, and we share those with MEMA. How we fit with the county environment, all disasters are local. They start, they end at the local level, so our job is to support the municipality. So the state has a great emergency operations plan. Most of the municipalities have a great emergency operations plan, or we're assisting in building. Where the county sits in emergency operations before, during, and after disaster, there's a small gap. So when you look at your 40-page plan, roughly, that Jim said, we only got to close a small gap. We're closing the gap between where the municipal plan leaves off and where the state plan picks up. So there's a lot of general speak, a lot of vague terms in our base emergency plan, but it gives us leeway. From a county standpoint, a lot of our assistance that we provide our municipalities is before a disaster and then after a disaster during recovery. So we're planning, we're preparing, we're training, we're exercising before. During an incident, during a disaster, during the hurricane, the October 30th windstorm, we were communicating. We were kind of that pivot point, gathering in situational awareness, sharing that back out, creating that common operating picture. That way the local municipalities can do their own thing. They can make their own decisions. So that's how we operate. So our response plan, which is what you see, pretty small. It just says, we're going to be open, we're going to be active, we're going to be receiving information, we're going to be pushing it back out so they can make their decisions. And I've asked Emily to step in here because I miss a lot of things. I do like to ramble on, and I like to jump over things. So if anything I miss, please.
Great job, Joe. No, the good news is, because we're a home rule state, decisions such as evacuation or shelter in place, those are made at the local level. The first responders really do the hard work in our communities, so we're lucky that they're so experienced and professional in their roles. It really makes our job easy. They have the heavy lifting, we do the light lifting, the coordination, the communication in between the municipal level and the state level, like Joe said.
So basically the impact here, by state law, we're required to have an emergency operations plan. To be NIMS compliant, which is the National Incident Management Systems, to be NIMS compliant, to get funding, we have to have an emergency operations plan. One of the previous topics was grant funding. So to be eligible for Homeland Security grant funding, we have to have a signed and approved emergency operations plan. And to be able to pass those grant funds on to our municipalities, which we've done the past several years, we have to be NIMS compliant, they have to be NIMS compliant. So it's that chain, that flow of money from federal to state to county down to the municipality to enhance their program. And just in case on that slide, so we've, to date, roughly $2.45 million that we've supported from Homeland Security grant funding down to the municipal level. So I think that's a big win. Annually, roughly, it's been about 170. This year, it's coming up for Homeland Security funding is 172,000. FYI, fun facts. So I don't want to bore the commissioners or waste a lot of time with just walking through this plan. Basically, what this plan does, it gives a brief overview, I'm sorry.
I have a question. You say this funding comes down and is passed to the communities.
Yes, sir.
Is it by some formula?
Yes, so see, each state gets a formulated amount, and FEMA does that about what each state gets, and that's based on population, critical infrastructure, and numerous other variables. Once it gets to the state, they have their own formula as well. They break it up in between each of the counties, each of the 16 counties, and each of the metros. Metros will get their own funding, so with Cumberland County, Portland, South Portland get their own allocation of Homeland Security grant funding, and then Cumberland County gets a separate amount. Once it gets to the county level, by mandate, we have to provide funding for our hazmat teams from that Homeland Security grant funding, and we also have to provide funding for emergency management response teams. So our volunteer response teams, which you've heard, the Animal Response Team, Community Organizations Active Disaster, Wireless Society for our amateur radios, those teams. We provide funding for them. And the rest of the funding that's available through after we've allocated those, that mandated funds, we open for sharing with our municipalities. So we have a process. It's not a formula through sharing with our municipalities. We open it up for them to bid on. Real quick, I'll go through that process. We share out that we have this much money available, and this year was 120. After our allocations are done, we had 120,000. We sent it to our local directors. They shared it with their fire, police, public works, and city managers. And then they submitted for Homeland Security eligible projects. Once they've submitted their projects, each person that submits a project comes on and serves on the committee, and they rack and stack their own. So once and they have to meet certain levels, so they have to be NIMS compliance, they have to have resource typed equipment entered into a state database. And so once they've met those requirements, they kind of meet all together and rack and stack prioritize that Homeland Security funding allocation. Once that's done, we submit it back up, and it's typically on your
Consent agenda.
consent agenda each year. So you'll be seeing it here towards the end of the summer, what our package will be going back up to the state.
Now, with your hazardous program and that funding, do you try to interact with the metros?
Yeah, absolutely. So and thank you for asking that, because that has been it's been a struggle. It's maintaining for both budget priorities and grant funding priorities. It's because we want to work for the same thing, and we can't be buying the same widget, and we want to have the same goal. So that's been a process this past year, since I've stepped into the director position, is creating those relationships and saying, where do we want to go together to enhance the readiness of the county, and we've done pretty well.
Thank you.
So real quick, again, very generic overview in our emergency operations plan about the demographics of Cumberland County, some of the hazards we're facing, and really just lays out very general roles and responsibilities for each major party that are involved in the emergency disaster planning before, during, and after. So if there are any questions, again, I don't want to do page by page unless I'm requested to do so. See any head nods, so that's good.
The good news is this document was about 700 pages before, so we have substantially whittled this down for you folks.
There was a lot of instruction, which you don't need to be instructed. It's about here's what we do, here's what we're able to do, which is fairly simple. There will be a lot more reading, so if you're ever interested in emergency planning reading, we have a lot more plans available for you, and it may just about keep evidence.
A very detailed and well-thought-out plan, and we appreciate your efforts and contributions to it.
Thank you.
Actually, I did had to learn something new. I've heard of firm maps before. I'd never heard of a slosh map, so I had to look that up.
I learned quite a great deal about that. I was fortunate enough to get sent to the hurricane school down in Miami, and learned a great deal. I almost feel like a weatherman now. Track some of that.
Should visit the Gray, the Weather Service station
incredible.
in Gray. That's a very interesting place. But do you know if the slosh maps are publicly, easily accessible to members of the public? I know the FEMA maps, you can go on their website, the flood maps, you can go on their website, and I do that.
I want to say they are, but I can't confirm.
Okay, well, I can go on their website and see if I can find it, because that would be an interesting thing to know how to access.
Anything further?
Just one note that this plan does require signatures from each of the commissioners. So this is just not a chair signature, so don't run away. After the meeting, we'll capture it to get signatures, and we'll get that up to EMA this week. You got that right there?
And a nice binder.
I move we approve the Cumberland County Emergency Operations Plan.
It's item 19040. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion of this item?
Other than to say, good job, and I mean, it's 41 pages long, and I've managed to get through it and understand a lot, so I appreciate the level of detail, and I appreciate the, addressing, you helping us address emergencies that come up in the county, because they come up, a lot of these, they say, they come up all the time, so we need to be ready, so thank you very much.
We have a version here suitable for signing as soon as we take this vote, so.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's unanimous. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There'll be a signed copy here in about, roughly speaking, 30 seconds.
Thank you for your time.
Item 19041 is an award of the KRT Appraisal LLC bid for doing a revaluation in the town of Baldwin, our regional assessing project. Jim, are you introducing this item?
Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce it. We're bringing forth this award of bid to KRT Appraisal, LLC of Haverhill, Mass. KRT was the appraisal company that came in to the region when Yarmouth was going through their reval about 2 years ago. And it was the belief of the assessing office that they did a phenomenal job, not only on the data collection and data crunching, but also the community involvement and contact that they had. The Yarmouth reval was deemed a great success and one that went very smoothly. In now the town of Baldwin, the selectmen there feel it's time to do a reval in their community. They have been with the regional assessing program for just about 1 year now, and they are feeling as though the reval is necessary, and the regional assessing office reached out again to KRT to see their availability to take on this project under the same parameters that Yarmouth went through. So we see this kind of falling under the same bid, hence bringing it forward. And it is one that, in this particular case, we would be paying a contract price of $74,500 to KRT for their services of reviewing just over 1,100 parcels in town. And then the county would have a cost for oversight of the revaluation of $6,500. That's over and above the current cost to the town for assessing services for the next year. So we're asking for the commissioners to accept and award the town of Baldwin's revaluation to KRT Appraisal of LLC of Haverhill, Mass. in the amount of $74,500.
We have a motion on this item, and then
So moved.
Second.
moved and seconded, and discussion.
Jim, during this process, are the records for the community to be brought up to well-working methods?
Yes. Yep, that's part of the reason. Yep. And I should make note that this, though we were bringing this under the Yarmouth contract, the next town that we do a reval for will not be so streamlined like we are with Baldwin here. That next town we would need to go out to bid again. So this would be the last one that would be directly right to KRT.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none. Call for a vote. All those in favor of this item, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Cumberland County Jail Budget, item 19042. We reviewed this in detail at a workshop that we actually televised because it was a budget-related decisional process. So, Jim, did you have further to discuss on this?
Yes, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, on May 28th, the county commissioners heard a full explanation of the 2019-2020 jail budget and where we were on the expenditure side and on the revenue side. In summary, the budget is up 4% which is allowed under state law. That equates to about $525,000 of new funding in support of the jail, and that's new taxpayer funding. We're seeing some positives on the revenue side. The county inmate revenue line is projected to be up $200,000, and the marshal service revenue line is projected at $100,000. We're seeing a decrease in revenue, though, under the ICE inmates of a negative $100,000. Some areas that we're seeing an uptick in are contracted services, which is the jail medical account. We're seeing an increase in that line of $207,000. Legal services is up $24,000, and food and groceries is up $24,000, largely due to our annual population. Food goes up when you put more people in the jail, and with our contract that we have up until the end of this year with the County of York in holding 30 to 35 inmates, it does have other effects along the way, and one of those is the food line, because we have to feed them. So, in summary, the jail budget is being proposed just over $20 million. And that is up $764,839 from the current year budget, which is ending June 30th. This budget is one of the unique budgets, much like the next agenda item, in that it is a fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th budget, and that is off-cycle from the county's general fund budget, which is a January to December budget. So. I am available for any questions that the commissioners may have that are lingering around the jail budget. Thank you.
So, why don't we start with a motion on this, and then we can have a discussion?
I move we approve the Cumberland County Jail budget for 2019-2020.
That's item 19042. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. So discussion.
Jim?
Yes, sir, Neil.
And Jim. The question I have is, and I think we addressed this when we had our workshop, I just wanted to verify, the legal services increase, which is fairly substantial, is a direct result of contract negotiating year, where there are several contracts that's been, we've had to have council review?
No. We are fortunate that the contracts that are being negotiated currently, which are the cooks, the jail supervisors, and the jail corrections officer, those are all being handled in-house. Dawn is leading the way, and thus far, I don't think legal counsel has been contacted, because Dawn is very capable of moving negotiations forward without legal help. And that was part of the reason why we brought Dawn on, because of his ability to negotiate contracts. Plus, he's a hell of a HR director.
And he's a good replacement when you're not here, you know? He's got that down pat.
We'd be out of here.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
we'd
right.
be out of here
Yeah.
by now.
But,
So the $24,000 increase, which is triple?
$24,000 is, we're seeing the line may have been a little too tight and not budgeted enough year over year, and we need to play a little catch-up. Plus, we're also seeing a significant amount of work legally around arbitrations coming from the jail, grievance. We need to touch base with legal around different grievance hearings and arbitrations. So, and one of the things is those items that go to arbitration, we are farming those out to legal to allow them to focus on that, so that it doesn't bog down our HR office.
Yeah, and you may remember, Commissioner, the sheriff discussed that the Freedom of Information
That's
requests
true.
that
That's
he
right.
was getting were
That's true.
more and more burdensome as well, and seemed to be tangled with legal issues that required help, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Steve?
Yeah, I'd add more to that comment, is that, you know, maybe Travis has more, can fill it in even better, is that regulations that seem to be coming with the legislators about how we operate a jail are coming fast and furious, and requirements by the legal part of the government is also becoming more burdensome. So our costs are going up because of this. And I think the public should understand that those don't come free. They are expensive, and they're going to get more and more so.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of the pending motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's unanimous. Next item is the cross insurance arena operations and capital budgets. And as well, the Cumberland County Recreation District Board of Trustees budget. Item 19043, do I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Moved and seconded. So all those, discussion on this item. I'll kind of introduce the discussion just to say, I thought we had a pretty comprehensive review of the good, the bad, and the ugly when it came to the cross insurance arena. We had it seems like a very capable management operation there. They identified challenges in getting shows to come to the center. They're working on it. They've made pretty good progress from what I could see, and they think that it's certainly a medium-term project. It's not going to happen overnight. Kind of happy to have a hockey team in there that looking at ways to improve that experience. Used to have a football team that showed up in the summer, but they're taking this summer off, and so it it's a work in progress, no question. So that's and the budget reflects that. Other issues, discussion.
Make another comment there, is that the capital budget is going to start to become larger because of just the age of the equipment. And we should be well aware of that. And I appreciate, I can't remember whether it was this meeting or at the CIA meeting, that the comment was made that they're going to do some engineering studies to see if they can't combine, I guess it was here, combine some of the heating problems with the cooling problems and see if we can eliminate the waste heat that we've got. It is a work in progress, and I think that the public gets good use out of this particular item, even though it does cost money from the county. It's a place where families can go and get some good entertainment if they so desire.
Just this past weekend, several regional high schools graduated there.
So, yeah. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the pending motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And we have new business. We have a collective bargaining agreement to be reviewed and voted on. Normally, we would probably go into executive session for at least a brief period of time to discuss any details that merit attention. So with that in mind, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move we go to executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA, section 4056A, to review and discuss terms of the successor collective bargaining agreement with NCEU Local 134.
And that's the Cook's unit. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and I will say, we will, when we come out of the executive session, it is likely that we will take up the pending item 19044, which is the contract draft itself. But first thing we'll do is vote on the executive session. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. So we are now in executive session. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We please have a motion to adjourn.
Comments?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's right.
I know you're in a hurry, but
Time is short.
the way the Red Sox played last night, I don't think you should be rushing to see that game.
I saw the bases loaded in the bottom of the 10th, and I said, wow, that's good, let's go to bed. We're gonna sc-
You obviously weren't there for the top of the 11.
Well, on Mondays,
Mr. Manager, do you have any comments for the,
I do.
Yes.
Yesterday was the 25th anniversary of the Peter Feeney Golf Scramble, and it was a well-attended event. We had, I believe it was 21 or 22 foursomes out at the course in Gray, Spring Meadows. Couldn't ask for better weather. It was probably anywhere between 75 and 80 degrees, and if you're wondering why my forehead is as red as it is, that's because I sunscreened everything but my forehead. But it was a really good event. Thanks to the Facilities Department for all the work that they did in sponsorships and getting that golf scramble put together. They do a tremendous job, and it's a really good feeling scramble event for all who participate. This year's nonprofit that will benefit from the net proceeds, which is still being tabulated at this point, is the Greater Portland Animal Refuge League in Westbrook. And it is our hopes that within the next couple of weeks, we'll take a visit to the league and present them a check. We understand from their representative that addressed the crowd yesterday, they were receiving upwards of about 50 dogs from Oklahoma that were impacted by, I guess, the floods that are taking place in Oklahoma. And so they were receiving those 50 dogs yesterday afternoon. And so the added funds will help offset the costs of bringing them on board. So, a great event took place. As Commissioner Jameson mentioned, the Cross Insurance Arena has been hopping since the 1st of May, where we had upwards of between 4 and 6 college graduations from local institutions in our area. And then I think we probably had about 9 or 10 high schools from the area that held their ceremonies at the Cross Insurance Arena. And so it's a well thought-out process at the CIA, and I think it provides a great venue for those who want to attend each graduation. I just want to report to the commissioners that the July 8th meeting is looking like it will be at North Yarmouth Town Hall in their meeting room. I know we had talked about going out to Long Island, but things just weren't jiving on our end. Long Island was very happy to have us, but unfortunately, we just could not commit due to some uncertainties on our side of the date. And so July 8th is the Monday, and that will be North Yarmouth Town Hall, starting at 5:30 p.m. And then lastly, next week, I have the honor of handing out 33 acrylic, in a sense, trophies or recognitions to those who participated in this year's Leadership Academy. Of the 33, we had 11 employees go through the Leadership Academy. The remaining 22 employees came from Wyndham, Cape Elizabeth, Scarborough, Yarmouth, GP-COG, South Portland. I'm going to forget someone here. I believe that might be it. But it's a great 7-week course that brings not only county employees from different departments together to get to know one another, but it also brings our peers from our surrounding towns, from all different types of departments, together. And so there's quite a camaraderie that takes place at these Leadership Academy sessions. This year, because of 33, we held 2 classes, 7 weeks in concurrent. And from all accounts, it was a very well-attended and very thought-out Leadership Academy that everyone came back from the classes thinking that they were taking real value out of each class. And so when I hear that they were getting real value, that means that we're doing something right, and it's a successful program. So next week, we will have our, what we call the Leadership Academy graduation over at SMCC, and we will induct the next 33 members of the class into our alumni association, which I just coined this year. So, other than that, thank you.
Mr. Brewer, anything from your point of view here tonight?
Just a couple of things to report. Again, I am in active negotiations currently with the NCEU corrections officers and also the Teamsters jail supervisors. Both of those contracts expire the end of this month, and we have had several negotiation sessions, so we're making good progress. We're getting down to where we're separating some of the wheat from the chaff proposals. So I hope to be bringing that forth sometime, if not this summer. I know we got one of the months off, but I hope to get that to you by the fall, if not sooner. Both of those contracts. And the law enforcement, Teamsters law enforcement contract expires the end of December. So we'll be going into negotiations with that unit sometime in probably late summer, early fall. Again, I'm very pleased to report that our finance and HR departments, our teams, we work very close together. We're fully staffed, which has been great. We just hired a young lady who just graduated from St. Joseph's College, right out of college, to work in the finance department as a finance HR clerk. And we're aggressive. We actually offered her a job before she graduated. But she's a fine young talent, was an intern with us last summer. But what that enables us to do is to take a much more proactive approach to, problem solving, organizational development, working with the departments, for efficiencies and cost effectiveness. So that's the approach that I like to take versus being reactive. So we're going in a good direction in those terms. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, Commissioner Wood-Thomas,
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
Not much, other than to inform the other commissioners that the MCCA, which Tom is the president of, is in the throes of looking at its due structure. The cost of doing business at the state legislature is getting out of hand, and they need more assets to be able to do what they do. So I just put that out there to let you know that we'll probably be coming back with a request for increase in dues.
Yeah. How's your committee coming on? Actually coming up with something. They want to get it done.
Yeah.
Done by the annual.
It's struggling right now, but it's a good struggle in my mind, because what's coming to the surface is all kinds of underlying issues that people don't discuss.
I figured.
And I'm not sure that we might make the deadline that's been placed upon us, but it's going to mean that that this committee's got to meet more frequent than it does,
Okay.
which it's trying to do.
It's a diverse committee from all over the state, so, on purpose, because,
And Norm Fournier's doing a
and
wonderful job.
Norm is really, I think, carrying a tremendous amount of work on that, so, thank you.
Commissioner Jameson.
I have no new additions tonight.
Commissioner Cowell.
Other than to say the monthly MCCA meeting in Augusta is tomorrow. I will be up there meeting, and I'll report back on that meeting at our next meeting in July.
I have very little except to say This is also the time of year for Special Olympics statewide, and that's a big event. A lot of people from southern Maine participate in that. That's one thing. The second is, in approving the jail budget, you didn't hear any wailing or gnashing of teeth this year, which is the first year in at least 8 or 10 that I remember, because we have, at least as far as we know, stabilized the state participation in the funding of jail operations in a way that has made it a little more workable for our property tax assessments. So, seeing nothing further, can I, yes?
I do have a question. Are we planning to have a August meeting?
I think the plan is to not have an August meeting unless there are items of immediate necessity that come up. I have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Let's get these contracts signed.